What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. Please hit that subscribe button and that notification button. And let's get straight to it. Spider-Man Brand New Day, my movie spoiler review. And I give it 2 thumbs up. It is my favorite Spider-Man movie out of Tom Holland's films, as well as Sam Raimi's and Mark Webb's films. Tobey Spider-Man, Andrew Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man, Brand New Day. The best Spider-Man movie, in my opinion, as far as what I enjoyed seeing. There was just a lot within this film that I was a little hesitant on in the beginning, but I just, watching it, a lot of the visuals, a lot of the characters, the emotions that I felt with this film, I don't think I felt in any of the Spider-Man films. Each one has their own emotion, but this one in particular, I really was involved. I was invested. I really felt, Tom Holland's Spider-Man's journey, his loss, his loneliness. And not only that, just to incorporate characters like, the Punisher, who also can relate to Spider-Man, within loneliness based off his loss, as well as, you have Jean Grey, who was a villain, but not necessarily the villain. She had experienced loss as well, so how she was handling it. And I don't know, I really liked it. My favorite Spider-Man is Andrew Garfield, but he only had 2 films, so more and more is just becoming Tom Holland as Spider-Man, even Peter Parker. Between Tobey and Andrew's Peter Parker, I like both in terms of Peter Parker, but, I never really cared for Tobey's Spider-Man. I grew up, that was the first film I saw in theaters as far as Spider-Man goes, and I was always like, this doesn't feel like Spider-Man, the way he's portrayed. I mean, the films are great. I like the films, and, the third one, it took a while. I appreciate it more now, but I just never really felt like that was Spider-Man to me. I grew up on the animated TV show, so, watching that Spider-Man and reading the comics, that felt like close to each other. And then Tobey's Spider-Man, I'm like, it's not hitting. But Andrew's Spider-Man, I really felt like, wow, this is the Spider-Man I was looking for in Tobey's Spider-Man. And I really like, his Spider-Man. I like The Amazing Spider-Man a lot. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has a lot of good beats, but there was just so much going on, and I didn't like certain portrayals of characters or routes they went. So that one is a little, on the bottom as far as, well, there's only 2 Spider-Mans, for Andrew Garfield is my least favorite one out of the 2. But it's definitely on the bottom as far as all the Spider-Mans go. And then Tom Holland's Spider-Man, it's great to see him in all the Avengers films, Captain America Civil War when he was introduced. But his films in particular, they were okay to me, starting with Homecoming, Vulture was cool, certain setups, but I really wasn't like, wow, this is a Spider-Man movie. It felt like Spider-Man, and you had Iron Man. It just didn't feel like a Spider-Man movie. But then we had, and then we had Far From Home, it just didn't really feel like Spider-Man. Again, because he's not in New York, he's not in America, he's away, which is fine. It just didn't resonate as a Spider-Man movie. But it was cool to see Mysterio. I'm a fan of Mysterio in the comics and in the games and the cartoons, so I like that we got to see Mysterio in the film. And then we had No Way Home, which was cool to see all the Spider-Men have, come into, Tom Holland's universe, the 2. We got to see that, that's something that you would see in the cartoons and comics, but to see all this multiverse thing, which I'm a fan of, time travel and all that, it was great to be like, wow, they actually did this. You wouldn't think they would do that at all. When I was little, I didn't think they would do such a thing. It would probably just be focusing on one Spider-Man. But we got Tobey's, Andrew's, and Tom's in that film, and I really enjoyed it more than, Homecoming and Far From Home. And it was great to see villains come back from, the other films. And Jamie Foxx is, I love him. I love Electro as a villain as well. I hated his portrayal before he became Electro and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But I liked, it was just cool to see him back as Electro when, he's already Electro. I always liked him as Electro. I just hated him as, I always hated his pre-Electro form, like this scientist or whatever, dopey. Like I don't know, it was a little too comical or just not for me. But I always liked him as Electro. But the problem with those films is that Tom Holland doesn't really seem to get his villains within his movies, other than the first two that we saw. No Way Home, Homecoming and Far From Home. And then we got the past villains in No Way Home. And then again, it wasn't much of a Spider-Man film because you got Doctor Strange, you have all this other stuff, and it's like, it wasn't contained, and that's what I liked about Brand New Day, because it was more contained. You had cameos of his villains, but then again, here we are with another villain, so to speak, in Jean Grey, and she's not really a Spider-Man villain. So it's like he hasn't really had time to shine, and I want to see his Doc Ock, I want to see his Green Goblin, I want to see his version of, Lizard. We're getting Jean Grey, and it's like, I wasn't for it at first. Sadie Sink as Jean Grey, I was hoping she wasn't, but I actually enjoyed it. I did like, how they portrayed it. Again, it's his universe. Why not have a Jean Grey? She doesn't have to be with the X-Men right away. Maybe the X-Men doesn't exist in this, universe of Tom Holland Spider-Man, but the characters can, just not as X-Men, but they can still have their powers or be formed, or, because I'm always like, I want to see the iteration as they're starting. And I know the films have been taking liberties and not being 100% the comics. So it's like, I had to remind myself that, but it was just so weird. I'm like, really, Jean Grey? But I liked it. I liked the route they went with. It was cool to see Hawk. Again, it was cool to see Punisher. That fight scene, that was my favorite scene. I really liked them. The visuals were great. It had a lot of heart. Jean Grey, I did like the portrayal. After a while, when she gets captured and whatnot, she really got into character, and I did enjoy it. It is expanding the world no matter what. Doomsday is coming, Secret War, so there's going to be a lot of mixed match before they somewhat soft reboot it to where they can have everyone, I guess, in the same world and universe, and probably not do with the multiverse for a while or if ever. I still wish they did the whole Kang thing. It has a lot of potential, and they just, they scrapped it. Like, they scrapped a lot of things, but again, quantity over quality, or quality over quantity, excuse me, because they gave us a lot of things and said that they would be coming out with other things that they just canceled or didn't really hit. And I felt like, they lost themselves with trying to give us so much, and there was just no payoff, So I'm hoping that a lot of the characters that we did get, like Kamala Khan returns. What are they doing with Ironheart? I didn't see the show, but, what are they doing with her? Moon Knight, like, is he coming back? Werewolf by Night, sure, one shot. It was cool, to see, but will that character make a return? Man-Thing, like, what's going on? So I want to see these characters be utilized the way they were introduced for a reason, which I would assume there was a reason. The Eternals, I didn't like the movie, but it doesn't mean I don't want to see them again. You've already introduced them. Let's do the Celestial thing. The Celestial took the Eternals. I want to see what's going on there. Like, you can't forget about the Celestials. Despite, this incursion is happening, they'll get affected too. But it's like, I want to see what's going on. But, I really liked Spider-Man a lot. Had a lot of heart, a lot of cool characters to see. Not, people shine. No one was left behind. I really enjoyed it. It's my favorite Spider-Man movie, and it's not just because of the hype. Spider-Man 2 was my number one for a while, but if I had to weigh the pros and cons, I feel like there's more pros that I would go with Brand New Day versus Spider-Man 2. One thing that always hits me, again, I don't like Tobey's Spider-Man, so that's already like a knock, but one thing that always gets me is that the scene, when Doc Ock needs to find Peter Parker to find Spider-Man. That's what Harry tells him. So he's like, all right, he's going to go find Peter Parker so he can get information on Spider-Man. But why are you throwing a car at Peter Parker who's in a restaurant? If you need information about Spider-Man, but you're throwing a car at him that's going to kill him. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. And then he, dodges the car out of nowhere, and Doc Ock doesn't think that's weird. So it's, it's a little weird in that aspect. Like stuff like that. That's kind of, it gets I don't know if if I can appreciate that as far as my favorite because of such things. But, Spider-Man 2 has a lot going for it. Doc Ock, he's awesome. But yeah, Spider-Man Brand New Day, I really enjoyed it. I had fun with it. It's Tom Holland is great as Spider-Man. The cast is always great. The films, I would say they get better, even if a little bit here and there, but they do tend to get better. So it's like, what can they do if they're going to do another one? Where will they go with that? And I just hope they really make it feel more Spider-Man related without a lot of the outside sources coming in. I just want Spider-Man, his rogues gallery, his characters that involved in his comics. It's cool to see the outside characters like Punisher and Hulk and all that, but I want to see a Spider-Man film with Tom Holland that's just focused on Spider-Man without these extra characters. But yeah, I liked it a lot. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend it, especially if you're a Spider-Man fan. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me. That's all I got to say about that. Till next time, later.